And welcome to another live session from me, Neil Millard, and I'm going to help you understand budgets today. As part of being a contractor, you've got money flying about the place. There's two real big reasons why you need a budget. One is right in the beginning. To make that leap from being a permanent employee to a contractor, it's good to have a little bit of a buffer because it might be a while. I don't know if you've ever changed jobs and gone from weekly to monthly. Man, that's the longest month in the world, going from weekly to monthly. And going from monthly salaried to monthly contracting can give a little bit of a similar a feeling about it, just because these things take a little while to set up. There's a lot of stuff to get going in the initial time. Set up a company, talk to your bank account, get all the payment details set up and things like that. And there's also sometimes a bit of setup cost. And you need to have a budget ready to cover those initial startup costs. And then, of course, when the money comes in, it's not always regular. With a regular income, it's easy to budget monthly. With an irregular income, it's a little harder to do unless you're disciplined with a budget. And that's what I went through with y'all last week. So this week, we're going to go into a little bit of a deeper dive into what a budget really looks like. So I've done my spiel about what budgeting is. It's basically the decision to spend your money before you've spent it. It's as simple as that, really. It's a bit like when you go to the shops and you buy food with your groceries and your food and things. You decide what meals, some of us do anyway, you decide what meals you're going to have for the week. I do this when I go shopping, mainly because sometimes the best before dates are a little bit pants, and so you need a little bit of sequential planning. You want to use the fresh salad stuff up. And because I only shop weekly, then I probably eat quite healthily at the beginning of the week, and then it tends more into refrigerated and frozen stuff as we go through the week. And that's just planning what I'm going to eat before I eat it. Budgeting's the same. It's planning what you're going to spend your money on before you spend it. This does two things. The first one is it makes sure that you don't run out of month before you run out of money. Oh no, that's the ideal solution, isn't it? You don't want to run out of money before you run out of month. That's really bad. The other reason why it's really helpful is because it reduces those impulse spending choices you might have. You've just seen an advert pop up on the TV, or you're browsing the internet and something catches your eye and you think, yeah, I really need that. But do you really? Advertisers are quite good at evoking emotion. I'm kind of trying to evoke a bit of emotion now, but it's all there in order to help you feel that you need something immediately, and therefore you go spend that money immediately. And then when it shows up the following day, you think, oh, maybe it wasn't such a clever choice to buy that, because you've slept and you've had a while to reflect on it. What about flipping that round the other way? Flipping it around that way and deciding what you're going to spend your money on before those adverts come on. And then when that advert comes on, you can go, do I need this? Yes, I really want it. Look at the budget. Actually, I've not budgeted to have that, or I have budgeted to have that. No worries, no stress. Anyway, what does my budget look like now? And I'm talking personally as my budget, because we're all different. Budgets are a very personal thing, I like to think. There isn't a one size fits all. So I'm going to show you a couple of things, what my budget looks like. It's made up of 5 pots. Some people speak of envelopes instead of pots. It depends on whether your parents taught you anything about money when you were younger, or whether you got any people you follow that talk about money. So I've got these 5 pots, and they look like this. I have a fun money pot that includes all the discretionary spending, I suppose you would call it. What I might want to have fun with, like gifts and education. They're kind of not necessities, as the second bullet item says, but they're a little bit discretionary. I can decide sort of how much to spend. Obviously, there's a finite amount, and I can only go up to a maximum number. But it's not, in stone what I spend. If I'm in town in the office this week, I might go buy a coffee from the coffee shop. That would be out of my fun money. It's not something that's really set down hard and fast, but it's fun money. It gets to Friday and it's like, well, can I be bothered to cook, or shall we just get takeaway? That kind of thing, right? Then there's the necessities. So those are stuff you absolutely can't go without. And I'll get more into what those later. Then there's a money pot, which is to do with savings and investments and future stuff. What's going to happen next week, next month, next year. And then I've got two other pots: property expenses, home and away. As a contractor, I spend a fair bit of time away from my home. And so this kind of covers the property expenses that I have when I'm not at home. So it might be things that I could claim on expenses through the business, maybe. They'll be budgeted and then the business will pay me back. And that replenishes the budget, if you like. Or if you're in a more long-term engagement, like I am at the moment, then you can't claim those expenses away from home because it's treated as a second home and as a permanent place of residence. And so therefore you get all the normal expenses: rent, your bills, water, electricity, all that fun stuff, right? So that's what it looks like now. But where did I start? Tricky question and tricky answer. The simplest place where I started wasn't from my parents. I'm sad to say that they didn't teach me much about money. They didn't have much of it themselves. And this is not a sob story. It's just, I grew up as a white male, so I'm quite privileged already, but didn't have a lot of money kicking about. And so neither did my parents, and so they didn't really know what to teach me, and that's fine. So we then go down the line a little bit, and I come across this fella, T. Harv Eker. You may have heard of him. He's an American fella, runs a couple of courses, zips around the place, and talks about money a lot. And I got a link to his blog down the bottom there, the 6-step money managing system. This is what I started with. And he says the habit of managing your money is more important than the amounts. And that's good, because in the beginning you often don't have much to budget in the first place. But if you're in that habit of budgeting what you do have, you'll have more control. Have more control, then that leads to having more money. It's weird, and all I can say is it's true, because that's what's happened to me. So, quick summary of what the 6 pots are. And these numbers, like I say, they're a guideline, they're a starting point, that's all they are. They might work for you straight away, they might not work. But there are 6 pots. There's necessities, financial freedom, long-term savings, education, play, and give. And they all have a slightly different purpose about what they're going to do. So where did I start? I had a humble salary of 17 grand a year in a permanent job working for a housing association. Not exactly a junior position, but this was a little while ago, and inflation has made these numbers bigger these days. Where are we talking? We're talking like 20 years ago. Time ago. Feels just like yesterday, but hey, it was 20 years ago. So yeah, a salary at the same point I was in my journey then, probably a bit more than it is now, but here we are. Let's deal with some real numbers. I look back on my accounts and yeah, 17 grand a year. £1,416 per month. I'm in the UK. Gross. That's before the taxes have been taken out of it. So what did I do with that money? Well, at that time, my necessities were a little bit more than 50%, so I actually started at 60%. That's £800 a month going into my necessity budget. Then I allocated 10% into my fun budget, that discretionary spending I was talking about earlier. And then I allocated another £135 to my future long-term savings and my gifts. So they both got £135 each. And then into the education and financial future, because I'd taken 10% off of the 50% to start with, so 50 and 10 is 60, the necessities, I've then scaled back a little bit on the education and financial future, giving them only £67.50 each. And this is okay. So what are these categories actually about though? So the necessities at 60%, £800 that I started with, to cover things like the rent and the mortgage, food you eat, grocery shopping, heat and light, and probably water. This is electricity or gas, or whatever else you're using to heat up your home. And you're probably using electricity for lights as well, I'm thinking. You know, the olden days used to use gas, but hey, we got electricity now, yeah. And the great stuff about electricity is all of the wind that we get in the UK means over half of the energy generated in the UK comes from wind. Anyway, digressing a little bit. We got home insurance, just in case something happens. You know, flood risks can be a thing. Accidents happening can be a thing. And the worst of all, burglary. But, you know, be prepared and be ready, as I often say in my posts. And then there's council tax in the UK, property tax. It's what you pay based on how much your property is worth to the local governing body, and that looks after shared services like roads, bin collections, and exciting things like that. What about the fun category though? It's very important that you should have a fun category, even if you don't have much budget to start with. Because if you haven't got any fun, it means you're not celebrating your successes. And having a budget and sticking to it is a success right there. So make sure you've got a budget in there so you can celebrate and congratulate yourself. So I use this stuff like, as I mentioned before, for coffees, if I go out, or my hobbies. I have a rather expensive hobby you might have heard of. Going out, yeah, down the club, dancing and all those things I used to do. Getting a bit old for that stuff now though. So maybe just a restaurant instead. And then I also use this money to save up for holidays. You know, a little bit set aside every month, and it soon adds up to a lovely holiday at the end of the year. And that leaves us with a couple more categories, which is the future, long-term savings and gifts categories. So long-term savings is pretty much what that means. It's something that you need to save up for. I mean, the holiday kind of falls into this category, but also stuff like if you want to buy a new car, or if you're saving up to buy a house, you'll need a deposit. It's a sort of long-term savings where it's going to take you a large number of months, or 2 years or 3 years to get there. It might also, and I strongly recommend this, having an emergency fund. Because there's nothing quite like something going wrong, like your washing machine breaking, and you're thinking, man, I've got all this money saved for this, that, and the other, and now I'm going to have to change my budget because my washing machine's broke. Well, here's a hint. Budget for that today. Make sure you've got that emergency fund ready for when that stuff happens. And if it doesn't happen, let that money sit there. It's always nice to have a cushion. And then for the gifts, then there's Christmas and birthday presents. And sometimes I buy spontaneous gifts for people as well. You know, you don't have to wait for their birthday or Christmas to do it. If you've got a budget for it, just go for it, right? And then the last of the categories, education and financial future. So education kind of falls into books, and I've got a couple back there, and some courses if you want to go on a more detailed course. So online studying or something like that. Because what you know is always a school day. Learn more, you know. There's so much stuff that you don't know, and it's sad to see that our education system doesn't teach us everything we need to know, but then you've only got a short amount of time to get all that stuff into the kids that aren't that interested about it in the first place. So continue your education. When you're a grown up or an adult or mature or something like that, you've got the choice to do what you want. Yeah, learn something, learn a new language, learn accounting, learn about how to be a contractor, whatever you want. And then there's financial future. This is possibly linked to pension, although a little bit different in this case. I'll get onto that in a second. But investments, stocks and shares, that kind of investing stuff where you hope that if you're buying a stock that pays out a dividend, it's going to grow over time. You know, you could be the next Warren Buffett, and your financial future fund could be all that stands in between you and being a millionaire in 20 years' time. So just to reiterate, these are guidelines. These are just where I started, and where I ended is a little bit different. But that's because all the numbers grew and changed. Yeah, my income for last year, as it says there, officially 52 grand. Because of the way I structure my contracting business. And because of the tax laws in the UK. So that money was then split up into those 5 pots or 6 pots. I can see 6 different colours on the screen right now. And those are, the housing home, the housing away that I went over earlier. And the percentages can be different. At the beginning, when I was earning 17 grand a year, the necessities was 60% of my budget. Now it's nearer 45% of the budget, which means I then have more budget to spend on long-term saving or fun stuff like flying helicopters. So this is where I am now. My necessities is only 45.5%, and that's made up of my NEC jar, which is sort of shared expensive stuff that I need. Desperately trying to think of what that might be right now. Motor expenses, stuff for the car, that kind of thing. And my housing expenses, which, as I said right at the top, is split into home and away. And that comes out at 31.3%. Add those together, 45.5% covers all my necessities. That's how much money I need in order to absolutely survive, make sure that I've got enough money, got enough food to eat, that's in this NEC jar, and I've got somewhere safe and warm to sleep at night. So the other jars, my play jars, 23%, including education and gifts. That's certainly a long way from 10% where it started. Again, all the numbers have grown, so I've got that ability to move these percentages around to suit my lifestyle and what I'm trying to gain here. And then my money is nearly the biggest category at 31.5%. That covers the tax that I need to pay to the government at the end of the year, long-term savings, and my investments, and the emergency fund. but most of all, long-term savings and investments. And remember I said the pension thing was a little bit different. Because I'm a contractor, my pension is actually paid directly from my company. So that 52 grand figure you saw earlier, that doesn't include how much my company is setting aside for my future retirement into my pension. And being a contractor enables me to make those kinds of choices. And so budgets also give you choices. You can choose how much to save. You can choose how much to invest. And you can choose how much your emergency fund is. I have an emergency fund, it's currently £1,000 and it sits there. And when I spend it, I then slowly top it up by about £100 a month or something like that from one of the other budgets. Until it tops out £1,000 and then it sits there again. Make sure you've got an emergency fund if you haven't got one already. So, choices means peace of mind. How much easier can you sleep if you've got that emergency fund? How much easier will you sleep if you know all your necessities are already budgeted for? Now, I don't budget month on month anymore. I budget a couple of months in advance. That means that my contract could stop today and I've got 2 months to go find another contract because I've got that buffer and all of that budgeting set in place months in advance. But start today, start small, and you are in charge of it. It's your budget. And then when you're ready, hey, maybe that's today. If you're not sure, then take our quiz. It will take you through some easy questions just to help you understand whereabouts on your path so that you're ready to make that leap. It'll tell you where you are on your path so that you can make that leap into contracting. This is what the landing screen looks like. We'll give you a free report once you've completed it to your email address. And then you can take the opportunity to speak to me afterwards if you want to go further with it. And I can share with you all of my stuff. So choose to be ready. The stuff I cover is, as well as budgets and cash flow, is also contracts, what they look like, and compliance. So I shall see you on the other side.